Psychoanalysis and Spirituality, thus Mahavidya, the 10 Mothers, Part 1. We start this series today, a series of 11 episodes. Today we will have an overview of what thus Mahavidya is all about. And from next time, in each episode, we will take up one Mahavidya and try to understand it from a psychoanalytic standpoint as far as we can. So let us go into what this is all about. This is about thus Mahavidya. Literally, the word thus means 10, and Mahavidya means the great knowledge. Maha means great, Vidya means knowledge. So this word means the great knowledge of the 10 mothers or the 10 goddesses. So thus Mahavidya is a spiritual area, a spiritual process, and the whole package of thus Mahavidya falls within a larger spiritual area called Tantra. One way to look at Hindu spirituality is to classify it into the Tantra practices, the Vedic practices, the strictly yogic practices, the Buddhist practices, the Jain practices, and other practices which will be not very popular but more in number, followed by very small groups. So Tantra along with Veda in terms of spiritual processes is a very large part of the greater arcade of Hindu spirituality. So within the arcade of Hindu spirituality, we have a part called Tantra. Within Tantra, we have a part called thus Mahavidya. And thus Mahavidya means the great knowledge of 10 mothers. From a psychoanalytic standpoint, it's very important how these 10 mothers are depicted. Because the moment we see the image of the mother, and that too, not a real human mother, but a mythical mother, it creates questions as to why these practices have been giving results to aspirants centuries after centuries. Because this thus Mahavidya spiritual package is a thoroughly tried and tested package over centuries. Probably, historically speaking, the age of the practice of thus Mahavidya would at least be 5 times the age of practice of psychoanalysis. Probably more than 10 times, I would say. So today we will just have a perspective of what this thus Mahavidya is. And then we will go in each episode into each Mahavidya to see what it is and try to understand it from a psychoanalytic perspective. We will not go into how this practice is actually done because it cannot be done without a guru who is an expert in this area and who can provide you with guidance and protection. And I am obviously not one of them. I am neither an expert nor a guru nor a protector. I am the one who needs protection rather. So what we will do is to try to learn from a distance about what it is and enrich and expand the application of psychoanalysis. Let us start with what spiritual practices are all about and what are their goals. In a generic sense, we are where we are. This is our present state. And from our present state, we want to reach a state of enlightenment. And everything that is done to reach from point A to point B is what we call is the spiritual process. It may be anything. It may be yoga, it may be mantra, it may be Vedic, it may be Tantric, it may be Jain, it may be Buddhist. it may be energy healing process, but essentially any process which takes us from where we are closer to this, if not actually to this, is a spiritual process. Essentially, this journey is a journey of self-knowing and self-transformation. And this is where psychoanalysis, spirituality, and philosophy all coincide. That the enterprise of self-knowing and self-transformation is common to both spirituality and psychoanalysis. Self-knowing how and transforming into what, that is where the differences are. So any spiritual process has to deal with elementals that constitute us. Whatever be the spiritual process, there is no way it cannot purify the elementals which constitutes us. So any spiritual process has to deal with one, removing the past accumulation of trauma and any addiction we may have. There is no spiritual process which refuses to engage with this. Similarly, the past accumulation of trauma has to be removed and new accumulation has to be stopped. Another way of saying the same thing is chakras have to be purified, elementals have to be purified. The same way of, it's the another way of saying the same two things. That remove the past trauma, stop new trauma from being generated. If this is done, then energy can rise from the root chakra to Sahasrara. And on the way, and this will lead to enlightenment. But before this happens, on the way, cognitive clarity will go up, intuition will sharpen and increase, go deeper. Some mystical experiences may happen, may not happen also, but mostly they do happen. Some powers come up, which may not come up, but mostly they do. The feeling of peace, happiness, and bliss, it goes up. So this is common to all spiritual processes, including thus Mahavidya, including any other spiritual process we may be following. What is the final state? The final state that we want to reach is enlightenment. If we are not able to reach it, we may be somewhere closer to it, but one step closer to it in some way. It is a state of no thought, no feeling, no desire, no fear, high awareness and bliss. Another state which is described as the state of enlightenment is the oceanic oneness with existence and ecstasy. There are some other states also. If somebody is interested, he can look at our episode on the FAQ enlightenment to see how the goal state is variously described. But one out of the many goal states called enlightenment as a macro word is where we wish to reach. Now, in order to reach there, we have to deal with what constitutes us. And what is important in that? So we have a physical body, a life energy, emotions, thoughts, senses, karma, pure awareness and bliss and elemental. This all has to be engaged with by whatever spiritual process we involve with. And if you look at the entire list of spiritual processes, compendium of spiritual processes, the Hindu spirituality divides them into one broad area is yoga. So within yoga, you have karma yoga, bhakti yoga, jnana yoga, raj yoga, integral yoga of Sri Aurobindo, where you proceed in with certain focus. In bhakti yoga, the focus is on devotion. In jnana yoga, focus on knowledge. In integral yoga, you have a mix of all other yogas. In the spiritual process of vipassana, the emphasis is on pure observation and awareness. In kriya yoga, it works at various levels, largely on using the breath, concentration, and purification by focusing on the chakras. if we look at any of this, it's virtually impossible to have a pure form of anything. So even if you are proceeding by Jnana Yoga, some form of bhakti will automatically come in the process. So emphasis may be on one, but other parts to some extent will inevitably join in. And therefore, every path is actually a spiritual package. It's not a pure path. Every path is essentially a spiritual package. And when we look at Tantra, there are many spiritual packages based upon the schools. And one of the spiritual packages for self-transformation and self-knowledge is the package of Das Mahavidya. And thus Mahavidya literally is the great knowledge of the worship, or rather the sadhana of the 10 mothers. Now this is done in two ways. Some people want to do all the 10 processes, the entire Das Mahavidya. Some people feel it is too complicated and too elaborate, so they choose only one Vidya and specialize in it. And one of the Vidyas that is very popular to specialize in is what is called Shri Vidya. It is one of the Das Mahavidyas. So this is how the Das Mahavidya is approached. So let us look at what these Das Mahavidyas are about. The Das Mahavidyas actually is a spiritual package. It is a path. It is a path to reach the state of enlightenment. But it is not only enlightenment of a sannyasi, it is also the enlightenment of which is accompanied by well-being of the material aspect also. So thousands of years before Osho talked about Buddha the Zorba, material abundance and spiritual plenitude, both together. We don't want an enlightened person who is begging from door to door. That was the intention of Osho, Buddha the Zorba, that you have abundance of material type and abundance of the spiritual type. So thousands of years before him, Tantra had this approach, a very practical approach, that not only you should move towards enlightenment, but before you do that, you should also take care of your material needs. You should also accumulate power to set straight those people in society who are troubling you or who are attacking your society or your country. So Tantra that way is far more rounded. It does not say no to material wealth. It does not say no to power or even the use of the power to set straight those who need to be set straight. And packages in Tantra usually involve therefore both the things. A slow movement, not a slow movement, a movement towards enlightenment. At the same time, a movement to remove obstacles on the path towards material well-being and power. Tantra that way is not afraid of material well-being or power. It in fact takes it as a test that if the enlightenment is really there, it should not have any problem or fear from material abundance or power or the use of power. So the Sanskrit thing I think is yoga bhogyate, something of that sort. Yoga passing through the path of bhoga. So it is not a path of the sannyasi who maintains a distance from bhoga and tries to overcome it from a distance till it's fully overcome. Tantra gets into overcoming by engagement.
So here, if you're talking about the word bhoga, is it to do with the consumeristic nature of human with regard to the materialistic physical world?
Yeah, it is both.
Or the experience of receiving. What bhoga of Sanskrit is here used for?
Yeah. So it is all the uh, four things put together. One is a belief that what you have not experienced, it is difficult to overcome, renounce, and transcend. Because some form of fantasy related to it can disturb you sometime. So that is a generic rule that it's better to experience what you wish to transcend. One. Two, bhoga also means that an ordinary person, when he starts on the spiritual practice, he cannot renounce things. Very few can renounce and start. So for a long time, the spiritual practice will go on and the material bhoga also will go on. And it may appear hypocrisy to some, but what is happening is over a period of time, the bhoga is reducing and yoga is increasing. But both coexist, so somebody can always make a charge of hypocrisy. But there's nothing to fear it. It's a normal path. Everyone has to, not everyone, but a large population has to go through. The third is bhoga, which is regulated, because Tantra also has three parts: the right, center, and left. So on the right hand part, it is extremely regulated bhoga. On the central path, it is ordinary bhoga of an ordinary person. It is accepted as normal. And when it goes to the left hand part, the bhoga can go to intensity, addiction, consumerism to any extent, to as deep as it can go. So you emerge from the other side free of it. So that is like, do it intensely, do it as far as you can do it to death. So in the left hand part of Tantra, this actually can easily go into perversion, but into addiction, but a consciously done thing to emerge out of it victorious on the other hand. So this is how the four different bhoga would be. The meaning of the word bhoga would be in the tantric context, where thus Mahavidya is situated. Now, we also have to spend 5 minutes here on the philosophy of the supreme reality. There are various ways in Hindu spirituality, various schools which have a different idea on what is the ultimate reality like. So if we look at the Dvaita school, it will say there is God and there is creation, and in the creation are souls, which is you and me and everybody else. And if we walk the spiritual path and get liberated, we will go near to the God, but we cannot become one with God. There always will be a difference between the soul and God. No matter how ecstatic and free the soul is, it can never merge into God. It can never become one. It remains around God. So that would be a Puritian Dvait conceptualization. That there is God, there is God's material creation, and in the material creation, there are sentient beings which have a spark of the God in them called the soul. In that conceptualization, we can never completely experience God by being one with Him. Then we have the Advaita conceptualization, where you have a Brahma and this material creation into which we are situated, and there is a possibility for us to rise in consciousness and experience a oceanic oneness, where is this, there is no second, only one. So there is this universal ground, and then everything flows from this universal ground. And in the pure Advaitic goal state, the enlightenment state, you experience the ground, you become one with the ground. So then we have a conceptualization of God as that ground, and everything flows from the ground. The third conceptualization is of Sri Aurobindo and largely shared by many Tantra schools. That is a triple manifestation, rather triple existence of God. So we have a God which has partly become the ground of the universe and partly become everything that is in the universe. So there is a transcendental ground. So God is in the ground. There is a universal ground of existence. God is also immanent. It has become everything in universe, and there is a part of it which is transcendent. So the best we can do is to experience ourselves as one with existence, but there is no way we can know or be certain of experiencing the transcendent. So there is a part of God beyond the universe, the transcendent. So there are three ways the God is conceptualized. There is a transcendent part, there is a universal ground part, and there is an immanent part. Immanent means it has become everything. It is involved, it's immanent in everything. So there is immanent, there is universal, and there is transcendent. Now, thus Mahavidya is essentially based upon this kind of conceptualization. That for each Mahavidya, there is a corresponding Shiva. Except for one, which is Dhumavati. So for each of this, and in the tantric context, the intense form of Shiva is referred to as Bhairava. So each of the 10 Mahavidya has a correspondingly Bhairava. So there are two ways of conceptualizing the same thing. That through 10 Mahavidyas, we move to the center, which is Shiva, the state of enlightenment. Another way of conceptualizing this is, for every Mahavidya, there is a Bhairav, a Shiva. So by worshipping the Mahavidya, we slowly get to the Shiva or the state of enlightenment. So by worshipping even one of the Mahavidyas, we can go to the state of enlightenment. Reach her Shiva or her Bhairava and get into the state of enlightenment. Another conceptualization is that every Mahavidya has her own Shiva, but in the center of, so the state of enlightenment you can get from any Mahavidya by worshipping the Mahavidya and then getting to the Shiva of the Mahavidya, the Bhairav of the Mahavidya. But in the center of all Mahavidyas and all the Shivas is Aditi, the transcendent part, which cannot be known. So there is Aditi, there are Shivas, and there are Mahavidyas. And from the Mahavidyas, you can come to the Shiva, but you may not come ever to Aditi. So Aditi is that transcendent real God, which has partly become universal Shiva and partly become everything in the universe, including everything immanent and including these powers of this Mahavidya. So these are the philosophical underpinnings of Mahavidya, that through any Mahavidya, you can reach the state of enlightenment, or by worshipping all of them, also you can reach the state of enlightenment. And after reaching the state of enlightenment, you may still wonder as to what all of this is all about, because Aditi, the transcendent, is unknowable. So this
So
also,
does this also makes us have a concept of reaching to God, making it a fantasy? It's like it's an impossible thing. You have the wisdom, you are enlightened, but yet not aware of the transcendent one.
yeah, enlightened enough to be free from the limitations of everyday ordinariness, enlightened enough to be free from misery and in bliss and ecstasy, but enlightened not enough to be sure of the transcendent. And that is, in a way, a limit of human nature.
So this concept, the one you are talking about, it is derived from the Vedas only, some part of Vedas, or it is an independent school in itself?
You will have overlaps with Veda. You will have overlaps with even the pre-Vedic Hindu civilization. Because before everything got conceptualized, it was like a free float of different saints, sages, and ashrams and different schools operating in different places. And therefore, you see a lot of overlap. And the overlap also is inevitable because in the ultimate analysis, there are two common things that all the schools are dealing with. Our own self, this system, and the system outside. So when you're dealing with this system and the system outside, there is no way you can avoid a total overlap. I mean, you can avoid a complete overlap. So I should say, you can completely avoid an overlap. Sorry. So overlap will be there. And some practitioners even say, like Vimalananda used to say, what is Tantra but the purest form of Veda? And what is Veda but the purest form of Tantra?
Okay.
So that also is another way of joining and separating things. But there are certain things which are common to all schools. The principle of karma is common. The use of karma, jnana, and bhakti is common. Use of mantra and meditation is common. Use of observation is common. The powers on the path are largely overlapping. And the final state, there is a very large overlap. So these are the common
Even
things.
the symbolic interpretation of the female energy, masculine and feminine, which comes from a very human context, the masculine and the feminine.
So this is where another practical insight of, sorry?
This also comes from the similar concept of Vedas and many other sciences.
So first, it is very clear it's not Abrahamical in nature. In the Abrahamical system, whether it is Judaism, Christianity, or Islam, God is always in the masculine form. It's never in the feminine. In case of Tantra, this is also an important aspect. That why to approach Shiva through Shakti? Why not directly approach Shiva? That is because it is very difficult. We find ourselves in the flux of thoughts and feelings and actions. We don't find ourselves in the poise of no thought and no action and no effect. So we don't find ourselves, it's not easy to jump into the goal state. So what is natural to us is the state of Shakti. The state of Shiva is a goal state, it's not a natural state. In fact, even if we wish to go into a state of no thought, we are pulled into the state of thought by the sheer force of the desires and fears.
True.
So the way to Shiva is only through Shakti for practically everyone. Very few people can directly contemplate on Shiva and reach Shiva. That is one. Second, there is also a psychological significance that mother is far more important than the father. So, can we not have analogous to Das Mahavidya, another package of Das Bhaira?
Exactly.
Of course we can.
Well, my next question was that only.
Yeah, so of course we can have. The central point would be this. The masculine and the feminine would have both to be dealt with in any self-transformation process. So it has to involve both the Bhairav and the Bhairavi or the Mahavidya. If somebody feels thus Bhairav is a better way to proceed, and we have a system where every Bhairav has a Bhairavi, the reverse of this system. Can it not be done? Technically, yes, it can be done. Why not? But most people would have a better result with this approach because the mother problems are far more than the father problems.
So, but is it running on the concept of transcending the masculinity and femininity and then moving ahead, or the union and the merging of two?
Integration. It is
Integration.
it is at the goal state is two. One, when you get into the transcendent state, the state of Shiva, then you are above both, beyond both masculinity and femininity. But when you come down from that state, you should come down into a state of integration.
Right.
So
very similar to
operationally,
school of psychoanalysis.
so both of them are the goals. Operationally, it has to be integration and the capability to go transcendent above it.
Right, sir.
Capability to go above it and the capability to engage with it in an integrated state. Both are the goals. So the Dasa Mahavidya is a way of to enlightenment by the worship of the 10 mothers. These 10 mothers are depicted here graphically. And you can see how Kleinian the picture is. So when we are dealing with the mothers, there is no way we can escape Klein. And this is a very good parallel that how thousands of years before Klein, the same ideas were approached in another language, another way, in a macro amorphous consolidated way. So if you look from here, the top, let us name them. This is the top line here is the top line here, and this line is this line. So this is this is Kali, this is Tara, this is Tripura Sundari, Bhuvneshwari, Bhairavi, Chindamasta, Dhumavati, Bagalmukhi, Matangi, and Kamala. These are the 10 Mahavidyas, and you can see the depiction how psychoanalytically rich it is. So when we go into the psychoanalytic aspect, we'll take up everything. How the depiction is, what is the story, each, so let us go. These 10 mothers can be divided into those, all of them are intense and fierce, because thus Mahavidya is supposed to be ISTDP of Tantra.
Okay.
The only stronger form would be Agora, or rather, this also can be a form of Agora. So the 10 mothers are all intense and fierce, but based upon risk, you can divide them into safe, less safe, and moderately safe. So the safer part would be Kamala and Tripura Sundari. Less safe would be this, and safe but intense. I mean, all of them are intense, but moderately safe would be this. The exact words actually are Ugra and Saumya. And we don't have exact equivalents. So these are Saumya, these are Ugra, and these are known as Saumya Ugra. Now, what does this approach? Essentially, it's an approach to self-transformation, along with getting some mystical powers. So what does this approach do and does not do? This approach does not deal directly with any psychological material to start with, like psychoanalysis. What is your memory of your childhood? The material will come up in the course of the Mahavidya's practice, but does not directly start with them. It does not directly start with any Panch Mahabhut. Like in some practices, you focus only on fire, only on water. This is not the way. They may be parts of a whole package, but they are not exclusive focus. There is no exclusive focus on the chakra, although the focus will be there as a part of the package, that when you recite a mantra, focus on this chakra. There is no exclusive focus on tattva engagement. I should not be using the word direct, but exclusive, let me say. What it does is, it creates a package of yantra, mantra, tantra, idol worship, lifestyle, everything. And through that, it addresses all the issues related to chakra, vayu, elemental, karma, our faculty, catharsis, capacity development, self-transformation, etc. So it uses mantra, yantra, tantra, idol worship, lifestyle changes, substances, and so on. There is a full package. And some people have tried to draw parallels between Das Mahavidya and Das Avatar, Das Mahavidya and Das Graha, Das Mahavidya and Das Vayu. While it Das Mahavidya and Das Avatar is not a very convincing parallel, but yes, Mahavidya does have an effect on the way the grahas affect us and the Vayu affects us, but in an indirect way. And some people also have tried with a model of 18 Mahavidyas, 24 Mahavidyas, and so on. But the most popular and effective continues to be the Das Mahavidya. So I think we'll have to stop for the moment and come back after 10 minutes. Zoom is asking us to take a break.
Right, sir.